Hi everybody, my name is Scott Elser. I'm a professional EOS Implementer. That's the Entrepreneurial Operating System, for those of you who don't know. And I've also got a long career in marketing and marketing strategy. So I wanted to share some thoughts with you today on really not dealing with the crisis right now, but moving past the crisis. So just from an experiential perspective, most of my career I've spent in Manhattan, although I'm lucky enough now to live in Phoenix. And during that time, I led organizations and companies through some of the major traumatic things that have happened to this country over the past couple of decades. So I ran an organization in Manhattan during 9/11, and we had to deal with that. I started my agency in New York City right before the Great Recession started, so into the headwinds of that was able to succeed. And finally, led my company of about 70 people when Hurricane Sandy hit Manhattan, and with no notice whatsoever, Manhattan and my office was closed for 2.5, 3 weeks and devastated beyond that. So there's a whole lot of things that I've learned from those experiences, and I thought I'd share them with you today in terms of, again, not the hunker down part. We've got that part. You guys have all done that. Everybody's kind of prepared to figure out how they're going to get through the next 60, 90 days. This is really about what can you do during this time to be ready for what comes next. Because there's going to be tremendous amount of opportunity and tremendous amount of hardship over the course of the next 6 to 18 months. So I wanted to really talk about that period with you today. And it really comes down to the 5 P's. People, purpose, positioning, products, and priorities. So I'm going to walk through those 5 P's a little bit and talk about how do you focus on each one of those to make sure your business is ready to make it through the tough times and capitalize on the opportunities. So the first P is people. And Jim Collins introduced in his book Good to Great the concept of right people in right seats. And it's critically important. What he never does is really go into any depth about how do you actually evaluate and get there. But what he does talk about is the fact that if you've got the right people in the right seats, you have the ability to adapt to almost anything, because vision is really important, but the reality is none of us have a crystal ball 5 or 10 years from now. And in fact, right now it's hard to have a crystal ball 90 days out. But I've seen my clients, several of them, where they've got truly the right people in the right seat and an incredibly cohesive leadership team. They're able to pivot, they're able to do things and adapt the business very quickly together, and they've been able to do well even in this environment because they have the right people in the right seats. So a great book to be able to really understand how do you establish the right people in the right seats is Traction by Gino Wickman. Now, as an EOS implementer, I'm biased to it because Traction is in fact the EOS model in a book. But I really highly recommend that you take the time and read this book with whatever time you have during the next 60, 90 days. So what Traction does is lay out in more scientific, more realistic ways, how do you determine right people in right seats? So right people is simple. Right people is really understanding what are your core values, what are you really about, what are those things that define your company in terms of what you expect from each other and how you expect people to act with each other and with customers, and what binds you, and being able to define those and really evaluate people on do they live those core values. That's how you define a right person. They are people who just live, eat, and breathe your core values. Right seats comes from something called the accountability chart. Now the accountability chart is really turning an org chart on its head. I've designed so many org charts, and often it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You have the people you have, you lay them on a board, and you just assign responsibilities. Whether they're great at it or not great at it, you're just trying to kind of fit round pegs into square holes until you have everything covered. The accountability chart really is looking at things not from the perspective of how do I match things up and how do I report people, but what functions are most important for the business to be successful? And what are the accountabilities underneath those functions that absolutely have to get done well for the business to be successful? And then, and only then, do you bring the people into it and identify who are the right people for those seats, who have the God-given capabilities, skills, and desires to do those jobs well. Because at the end of the day, you've got to make sure those functions are covered, and you got to make sure then that you have the right people in the right seats to do those. But if you've got to start with what does the business need to be successful and then who to fill them, the org charts happen the exact opposite way. So from the perspective of getting the right people in the right seats, I really recommend that you read the book Traction. It's going to help with a lot of stuff, but particularly with that. The other thing that you really should think about during this time, when you've got, with the CARES Act being passed, you're either keeping people that maybe you don't have fully busy right now, or you're bringing people back because of the CARES Act, so you're able to do that. Understand for the people that you have that truly are right person, right seat, how do you invest in them and build their skill sets to be able to kind of move them up the A player scale, if you will, right? Take these A players, make them better. Take people who can be A players, turn them into A players. Take those people who maybe are B players and try to make them make their skills more like A players. That's another thing that you can really do right now. And there's actually a number of low-cost training exercises, training classes, and things like that that you can sign people up for to grow their skills. Certainly they can read books, but you're paying for this energy, you're paying for this time. So if they've got the capacity right now working from home while they're social distancing, take the time to make sure that you're learning, growing your team, and making sure those people who are the ones who are going to get you to the dance long term have more skills, capabilities to be able to do that as you move forward. So that's the people component. And I really recommend that you spend some time on that. The next thing is really to think about purpose. And here, this is really about the concept that focus is going to be more important than ever. So I am going to recommend now a Jim Collins book to you, Good to Great. It's a classic. And in Good to Great, one of the points that Collins makes is that companies that truly focus, companies that do one thing really, really well, are the companies that really succeed. He talks about something called the hedgehog concept. And the hedgehog concept is really simple. There's a fox and a hedgehog, and the fox has every natural capability in the world. It's faster, it's smarter, it's more agile, it's got sharper teeth, it's better looking, it's got everything going for it. The hedgehog has one thing. It rolls into a ball and sticks spikes out. That's all it does. But the hedgehog always beats the fox. And why? Because the fox can do all of these different things. It's kind of that jack of all trades, master none. The hedgehog has decided, this is what I do, I'm going to do it better than anybody. And because of that, it's able to consistently beat the fox. Think of your business that way too now. Right now, your team, you probably are going to wind up with less people. The market's going to shift. The consumer sentiment's going to shift. There's going to be all these different things that are different when we start to come out of this fog. Having a real clear sense of purpose is going to help make sure that your company's energy is focused on the things that you're passionate about doing, but just as important, focused on that niche, that thing that you feel like you can do better than anybody. That's going to be super, super important, because at the end of the day, if you really can't answer those things, you're not bringing that passion, but you also aren't able to look a customer in the eye or give them some sort of a proposition where they feel like you're going to be the best one to solve their problems, you're not going to succeed. That's where understanding that purpose, understanding what you're about, understanding that core focus is going to be key. Focus, focus, focus. And that takes to positioning. So the third P. So with that core focus, you've got to figure out how does that work in the lives of the consumer. Another great book that I'm going to recommend that's going to help you envision how you play that role is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And this book really brings home the idea of how to take you, and what brands typically do is they put themselves in the hero seat and turn that on its head, and instead understand that it's your consumers that are the hero. So coming out of this, your consumers are going to have a story. They're going to have something that they want to accomplish and they need to accomplish. They're going to have challenges to do that. Your job isn't to be the hero of their story. Your job is to recognize that they're the hero, what they're trying to accomplish, their own story gap, which is what they talk about in the book, is what you're trying to help solve. You're simply the guide to get them from where they are to where they want to be. And the more you can look at your company that way, you can look at your brand, you can look at any of your products and understand not what you do, but how do you help your customers get from where they are to where they want to get to, the more successful you're going to be. There's going to be less spending out there. There's customers that are going to be more discerning with what they do and why they actually take their wallet out. You need to be in their hearts and minds. They're not hope that they're going to get into yours. So that's another book that I really recommend to get you just to think a little bit more about how you can add value to your customers rather than talking about what you do and hoping that your customers like it. And that gets to the fourth P, products. So consumer behavior is going to be different. What they're trying to accomplish is different. Their mindset is different. Their spending habits, the way they travel, the way they communicate, the way they congregate, all of that's going to be different. So for many of you, that's going to create real opportunity for you to take if you're ready to take it. So Eric Ries wrote a book named The Lean Startup. And the Lean Startup introduced the concept of an MVP, a minimal viable product. So essentially what that's talking about is most companies will go out and try to build a product and launch it. From his perspective, you do it differently. You actually try to get something out there that's the absolute minimum, quickest thing you can do to create the experience that you're trying to sell without necessarily creating the infrastructure and taking the time and spending the money to build that. So the example that he uses in the book is Zappos. So when Zappos was being founded, they wanted to know, can we sell shoes online? It may seem quaint now, but back then that was a new thing. So rather than building a whole e-commerce engine in a warehouse and all that kind of stuff, Zappos went out, founder, and he took pictures of shoes in a shoe store and put them online. And whenever anybody ordered those shoes, he would go to the shoe store and buy them and ship them. All he was trying to do was understand, will people buy shoes online? Once he realized that they would, then he made the investment to build the engine behind Zappos. But he already knew that people were going to do that. Imagine he'd done it differently and said, I'm going to build all of this and hope that people buy shoes online. So he just got scrappy, got lean, and went and did that. So I highly recommend that book. And what I recommend is that you, now I'll go back to Jim Collins, obviously I'm a big fan, is that you use the bullets and cannonballs concept. Most companies, when they launch a new product, they fire cannonballs. They make big investments and they hope it works. They hope it hits its target. But the reality of it is, what you should be doing is firing a bunch of small bullets. Get your target down, understand what you're doing. And once you start hitting with those bullets, that's when you fire the cannonball. You want to test first, fail fast, right? And the whole concept of that is not to spend a fortune in time and money and resource before you fail. Fail fast, learn, move on. And that's really, again, going to be critical because these opportunities are going to be out there. You're not going to be 100% sure. You can either seize the day or have somebody else do it, but you also don't want to make a whole lot of mistakes. The final P that I want to share with you is priorities. And the book I'd like you to think about here is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. So Essentialism is really an amazing book that reminds us that, most of us will tend to say yes to anything. I know I have a tendency to want to do that. I like to help people. So I'm willing to say yes to anything and try to help anybody. But the reality of it is the concept behind essentialism is really the concept of saying no to most things so you can say yes to the most important things, but do a kick-ass job at those things. This is, again, going to be incredibly important. You're going to have fewer resources. You're going to have fewer dollars to spend on investing on things. You're going to have to do more. You're going to have to do more better with less. And the key to that is to only do the things that are really most important to your customers and most capable for you. So saying no to more things so you can say yes to the things you're going to be great at is really, really important. I'm also going to go back when we talk about priorities and again recommend that you read Traction. So Traction really does a great job, and EOS as a whole, of putting you into a 90-day world. So it's really about setting goals for the next year of what are the few things that you really want to accomplish, and then how do you work every 90 days to build a plan toward achieving those goals and hold yourself accountable to them. So Traction really does a great job of setting priorities, and that's what I love about being an EOS implementer in terms of being able to help my clients get up on the system and to be able to really set those priorities, and I help them be accountable to them, and I help them make sure that they're hitting those 1-year goals, 3-year goals, and their long-term objectives. So I just want to recap the 5 things that are really important for you to focus on your business right now. Number 1, make sure that you've got the right people in the right seats that are going to take you forward as a business. And as you have to make tough people decisions, make sure that you're really aligning around right people in right seats. Check out Traction by Gino Wickman to get more information on that, or just give me a call. Make sure that you have a clear sense of purpose. Make sure that that purpose is really what you're passionate about doing and what you can be best in the world at, and really use that as laser focus to deliver high quality for your customers, but also to drown out all the noise that might be around, right? Make business decisions based on the core purpose and that niche. Understand the role that you play as a guide to help your customers get from where they are to what they want to accomplish. It's not about you, it's not about your products, it's about your customers and what they're trying to do in a world that might be very different, and how you're going to play a vital role to help them get there. So the Story Brand and Building a Story Brand is a great book to help you with that. Lean Startup is a great book that talked about how do you then take advantage of those opportunities by launching those minimum viable products that are going to help you learn very quickly what people want and what you can do to solve that without investing a ton of time and money to get there. And finally, how do you look at prioritizing? And those 2 books, again, Essentialism as well as Traction, in terms of learning how to really say no more so you can better say yes to the things that are most important and get them done better, but also Traction again in terms of how do you get into that 90-day mindset of really setting those objectives, getting those objectives done, putting the accountability in place, and drowning out the bright, shiny objects that are going to distract the organization. If you do those 5 things and you start doing them right now when you can do this planning, you're going to take advantage of the time that you have, and you're going to drive more success in the organization long term as we start to move out of all of this. So if you have any other questions, and Scott Elser, I'm an EOS implementer, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Again, the book Traction is basically what I help businesses get up and running on. I'd be happy to share more insights. My email is scott@thetractionhub.com, and I would love to spend 90 minutes with you and your leadership team to walk you through how EOS might help, how we can position your business and help position your business to be able to operate on the EOS model and be more effective as you come through this, or quite frankly, just to trade notes or have a call and just share any ideas and insights that I have from my own experience living through and coming through these kinds of disasters. So please feel free to reach out, scott@thetractionhub.com, and I look forward to hearing from you soon, and best of luck. Thank you.